Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard tactics video. So 8th edition has been out for a while now and Imperial Guard have been identified by the community at large as being quite a powerful faction. We've covered this already and I've argued that the reason why Guard came out so strong is that there were a lot of commanders out there with vast collections, people that have been with the Guard through thick and thin. And, we still just used our same tactics that we've always used, but now they were really powerful. Now, because of the success that Imperial Guard have been having, it has caused quite a lot of other players to jump on the bandwagon. Some of these are people that have genuinely always wanted an Imperial Guard army, but aren't willing to invest in one that isn't going to do very well. Many of them are win-at-all-cost players, people that collect the flavour of the month. And interestingly, what I've noticed, I've been keeping a beady eye on these supposed Guard commanders down at the club. And what I've noticed is that they are actually struggling to win games with Imperial Guard. Sort of one of the semi-bandwagon players, not really, but semi-bandwagon players I covered in my Chaos After Action Battle Report. And there's another couple there as well, which have started collecting Imperial Guard, who are having similar issues. They've read about conscript blobs are amazing, Imperial Guard are really powerful, but they're turning up to the club week after week, trying to tweak their list, reading stuff online, and they're just getting smashed week after week. And they're not really understanding why. They're there thinking to themselves, I collect Guard, I've got conscripts, why am I not winning? And I think I'm going to go through one or two things that I've noticed that are quite newbie mistakes of people who haven't collected Guard and are coming into it from a completely different angle, completely different army. So the first thing that I've noticed is that these guys just aren't bringing enough infantry. They're turning up, and I've seen a lot of people in comments, I've said this to a lot of people in the comments in other videos, but I'm going to cover it here now. These people are turning up to games with 60 to 80 infantry, a couple of conscript blobs, a couple of other squads, and then the rest of it's just tanks, Leman Russes, Punishers, Wyverns, and, Shadow Swords, Storm Lords, these things that they've read online are amazing. And they're just getting smashed. And the problem they're having is the fact that they're not bringing enough infantry. They're so used to, having a Space Marine army where, 30 Marines is a big deal. Collecting a Gladius strike force where you had multiple, the most you had was 50 Marine models. And that was whoa, 50 Marines, that's huge. And they're like, well, if 50 Marines was a lot, then, surely 80 Guardsmen is a lot. And I'm there looking at them deploying, and I'm like, so where's the rest of your infantry? And they're like, oh no, it's there, it's my, I've got my 80 infantry. I'm like, that's just your first line, where's your second line? You see, the problem is that they don't bring enough infantry because, basically guys, this is a advice to all you new Guard players out there. 80 infantry is not enough. You need a minimum of 100. My recommended baseline is 120 guys. If you want to win game after game, you want 120 guys. Because you basically take your infantry, take the amount that you have. The first 60 to 80 are already dead. They don't know it yet, but they're already dead. They're walking corpses. They are your acceptable casualties that you're going to write off every single game that are probably going to die turn 1 and turn 2. Especially if you're facing an assault army, especially if you're facing Imperial Knights. First thing you've just got to accept is the first 80 guys are going to die. Depending on what points level you're playing. If you're playing about 1500, the first 40 to 60. If you're playing 2000, the first 60 to 80. They're just going to die. My recommended rule of thumb is that you need to be able to absorb 30 to 40 infantry casualties every turn for 4 turns. If you have enough infantry to do that, then you'll be okay. So this is the problem that these players are coming into though. They're not used to the casualties that the guards suffer. I mean, many, and I'm not gonna layer this point down, but I'm leading on to my next one, which is it's a psychological impact. You know, as a guard player myself, when I remove 40 guys in a turn, I don't even really think about it. It's like, okay, yeah, I lost 40 guys, whatever, normal. Or I only lose 30 guys. Oh, that's less than expected. To these newer players coming in, the psychological impact of losing 30 to 40 guys a turn for 2 turns is massive. They can't handle it. They physically, it's an alien concept to them. And even, you know, I'm looking at other Horde players and they're like, you know, like Green Tide, and, you know, a lot of Green Tide players are like, I've got 3 mobs of 30 orcs. To me, that's not a proper Green Tide. Proper Green Tide is 6 mobs of 30 orcs. You know, you got Tyranid players. I've got a battle report coming up, guys, with some Tyranids in, by the way. It's going to be a good one. And the Tyranid player is like, I've got 4 mobs of 20 guys. It's like, well, that's 80 dudes. Is that really enough? No, of course not. If you're collecting a Horde army, you want to be pushing 120 dudes as your minimum baseline. That's your minimum. Now, the reason you want so many guys, leads me on to my second point, which is the reason you want so many guys is you need to do this 2-wave strategy. Talked about it a lot in the comments. Time to put it onto a video so that everyone can see it. It links back to the first con, which is basically the first wave of guys you're going to have. You want to make that up with either bare bones infantry squads, if you're not big on conscripts, or conscript squads. They want to be cheap. You don't really want to be putting any upgrades into them. If you absolutely must, maybe flamers. But honestly, I would save that for the second wave. The first wave's job is just to die. They're, like I said, they're already dying. But they serve 2 purposes. One, if you're facing an assault army, then the first wave, the bare bones wave, the cheap wave, is there to absorb the inevitable turn 1, turn 2 charge. You've got to have, you've got to absorb that charge. And they might all die. Maybe, 10, 20% of them will live. But whatever. Basically, that first wave will get annihilated. The survivors, you pull back. Then you have your second wave, which should be in rapid fire range if you've been if you've suffered from a major assault. And behind them will be your big hitters, your tanks, your wyverns, your artillery, your heavy weapon teams, your shadow swords if you really want that kind of thing. Your Leman Russers. That's the third wave, but that's not an infantry wave. You need 2 waves of infantry. And basically, the first wave will die. The second wave will counter-attack. You will just first rank fire, second rank fire, overcharging plasma, re-rolling ones. You're going to have all your combos, all your tasty, your Harkers combined with your first rank fires, your Yarriks combined with your first rank fires. All these things, your massive ordnances, maybe, master of the fleets, maybe, all these things working together with your officers and your orders and your auras. That's all needs to be focused on the second wave and the third wave. The first wave shouldn't really be affected by any of those. They're just expected to die. Now, if you're facing a shooting army, this bare bones wave, this wave of conscripts, this first 100 guys, that's for me, it's 100 guys. Well, I say 90, and then I have another 90 behind. Their job, the first 90 guys, is to run at the enemy. Just run at them. Into their face. Pell-mell. Billy Zulu style. Orc style. Brave, bold, beautiful motherfuckers. They need to go in there, balls and bayonets, and just get in your opponent's face. Your opponent will have no choice but then to shoot the majority of his firepower at your first wave. Because if he doesn't, they're going to start getting in amongst him. They're going to start tying units up. They're going to be occupying space. So he's got to shoot that first wave. Meanwhile, moving up behind, you've got the second wave, the third wave. And their job is to lay firepower, brutal bombardment firepower into your opponent. And whilst he's busy wiping out conscripts, bare bones squads, the real meat is slugging round after round into him. And finally, he turn 2, turn 3, he chews through the first wave to the point where he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. Well, guess what? He's just taken 3 rounds of firepower from Leman Russes, Plasma Infantry Squads, Heavy Bolters, and he's on his knees. So my recommendation is, I know a lot of people just go, just conscripts only. I would not recommend just conscripts. I actually recommend a healthy mix of conscripts and infantry squads, because infantry squads can take plasma, they can take heavy bolter, and they're the current hotness. So there you go, guys. That's my general advice. You want to, if you're a new player, get it into your head. You want 80 guys isn't enough. You want 150 infantry. You want a nice mix, 50% conscripts, 50% infantry squads. That gives you variety, gives you versatility, gives you tactical options. Your first wave is expected to die. Your second wave of infantry is going to be doing some heavy lifting. And your third wave behind that should be your heavy hitters, your artillery, your heavy weapon teams, and your lean Russes. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.